Hey everyone, here's the weekly dispatch of records played, revolutions as they call it. You know how it works. Not gonna preface this with half an hour of a preamble. I'm gonna start with this record, Standards by Tortoise. Uh, Wonderful, wonderful, sort of post-classic Tortoise, I'd say, as the album that came out after their run of TNT, well, Millions TNT, and it's probably obviously appraised differently because what came before. I still think it's a pretty strong album, mixed between experimental rock, post rock. There's a bit of jazz there. I mean, it's the group featuring, after all, Jeff Barker, who you know has become better known for his jazz experiments these days. Um, it's an album really worthy of a revisit if you have that and you haven't played for a while. I feel it's just a little bit under the radar, but I think it's also because historically it's the one that came after the peak, really the pinnacle. So next, an album that I grabbed just last week, Tuxedo Moon, Holy Wars, an album from 1985. I'm a big fan of the first three Tuxedo Moon records on RAF Records. And I sort of was looking for this on the premise that it contained one of my favorite songs, In a Manner of Speaking, which was covered by Martin Gore and the French group Nouvelle Vague. And I just love those versions, and I just really, I think it's one of these 1980s new wave gems that keep being rediscovered, and in fact, it must be good because it keep being covered. So, but the whole album in itself has a very, a very UK synth wave kind of a feel, very dark, sort of Bauhaus esque record. Um, and it wasn't very expensive. It was in a local shop, so I was really happy to grab that and to now being able to spin it. It's great. Um, Here's a little album that um, I love, and it's very easily attainable. At least here we see Arc of Diver just about everywhere. Uh, I read a comment somewhere that said that it's the pet sound of bargain bin records or something like that, which I thought was a hilarious take on it. I wouldn't go that far. I think it's a nice sophisti-pop record. Steve Winwood, obviously of Traffic. This is one of his first solo, if not maybe his first solo outing on Island Records, 1980. To me, it has a very sort of talk kind of feel. Not exactly, but in that sort of sophisticated, well arranged pop and very melodic. There's a song called Spanish Dancer there, which is really where it's at if you want to listen to anything on this record. I think it's a cool record. I mean, people might find this very cheesy otherwise, but I love his voice, and there's something about the music which is kind of dated but kind of timeless at the same time. I don't know how to explain this. I played this album this week, the birthday party, Junkyard. One of these kinds of classic Australian records from that period, the first group headed by Nick Cave, just after but the Boys Next Door and the Birthday Party is effectively the same thing. It's just a continuation with the great Blixa Bargeld and no, what am I saying? Blixa Bargeld, Roland S. Howard. Blixa Bargeld is the Bad Seeds. Mick Harvey on guitar, Phil Calvert, just a great record with She's Hit and Cupid Doll, Big Jesus Trash Can. just really dark, gothic, enraged post-punk. I don't know why I felt like playing this Blondie album this week. It, you know, the sleeve is so excellent. I think on this record, it's just a beautiful shot of the skyline of New York and the band. It's just so well realized. I just love this record sleeve. Probably is not the Blondie album to start with, but I think it's kind of so under the radar that when you pick this album up and you have almost no expectations. I've had this for years. This belonged to my wife, this album. So this is from 1980. She probably had it since the 80s herself. So it's a well-worn original copy of it. It has Rapture on it, which is one of the most amazing constructions of sort of proto hip hop. I think it's one of the highlights of the Blondie catalog. This song, with the rap that she does in the middle, and she talks about Fab Five Freddy, and it just kills for me. I played Document this week, REM, 1987. Really, really, really great album by REM. One of the many classics with Finest Work Song and The One I Love, and obviously It's the End of the World, which is kind of overplayed, but I think The One I Love is kind of this almost perfect pop song. Amazing. Don't need to say much about this. It's a lovely record. This I enjoyed less. I don't know why. I've had this on my shelf for many years, and it's kind of, I always considered to be a minor classic of the American sort of indie catalog, Bob Mould's workbook. Now, I'm not really a fan of Askew. The music doesn't really do anything for me. Same for bands like the Minutemen. That's not my thing. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying it's not my personal joy in music. I understand why but Bob Mould solo and Sugar I quite like. But I don't know, this, when I played the other day, it just didn't really do it for me. I'll give it another chance, obviously, because I used to hold this very high in my pantheon of records, but I don't know, it was perhaps I wasn't in the right mind to listen to it. And yes, in this show, I can also talk about records I didn't enjoy. That's Spaceman 3, Dream Weapon. Great avant-garde, Lamont Young, totally Lamont Young inspired kind of piece. In fact, there's a whole blurb about it. Very drony, dreamy kind of space music. An evening of contemporary sitar music part 1, which is basically just them droning on guitar and zoning out. It's perfect for a Sunday afternoon, this music. You just put that on and it just takes you places. It's practically a crack rock record, really. It's, if you think about it. Superior Viaduct has reissued these very lovingly, very, very beautiful reissues, very just a really good quality reissue. I think an original of this would be nice, but I don't need to spend that much money in doing this. Play some jazz now. Last night I revisited this wonderful French jazz record, Laurent Petit-Gérard, accompanied by, amongst others, Teddy Lazary on flute and saxophone. So Laurent Petit-Gérard is a French pianist, obviously. This album is kind of like a modal jazz minor classic. It was released in France in 1971, I think, or thereabouts, 71 or 72. And reissued in 2020 by Superfly Records, which is where I, quite frankly, discovered this record. I don't play it a whole lot, but I think it's just got a lovely atmosphere. It's the build up of music on it. It's very much in the mold of modal, spiritual, but with European flavor to it. And just love Teddy Lasry on saxophone on this. He just is really classy and a household name practically. Two household names, Steve Lacy and Don Cherry. Evidence. What a superb piece of sort of avant-garde jazz, but very palatable. Nothing really too jarring or aggressive. So Steve Lacy on soprano sax, who can go off sometimes. Don Cherry on trumpet, and the great Billy Higgins on drums. If you get one Steve Lacy record, this wouldn't be a bad place to start or to be at. It's mild and wild, both at the same time. This week I pulled out my Chêne Noir records. Chêne Noir, French avant-garde, free jazz, experimental jazz band from the 70s, formed in Avignon in the south of France. There's a theatre there, Théâtre du Chêne Noir, and that's where the band formed, so they call themselves Chêne Noir. This is Orphée 2000, reissued on Heavenly Sweetness in... Well, I've had this for a few years now, so I can't remember. Probably about 5 years ago-ish, from 1976. An amazing sort of spiritual modal jazz record, but with a very sort of dark and twisted sort of sense of humor pervading through. Amazing. They've only made 3 or 4 records. All of them are impossible to find. And I also played this amazing little spiritual jazz number, Miss Madonna, which this one is a souffle continu repressed, which is from a few years ago as well, 2020. So I think this was from about 2020 as well. This is from 1973, Miss Madonna. Amazing. If you like Pharoah Sanders, I don't think it's a million miles away from Pharoah Sanders, personally. But I just feel that this music is, it's super under the radar for reasons, because it's super hard to find as well. I bought this probably a couple of years ago, but not played very often. Flock, UK jazz with an absolutely amazing artwork. You can't really do much better than this. This group is a collective with Sarah Lee Corwell, the British Indian. He's a percussionist to start with, and Dan Log from Comet is Coming. Just a really, really great spiritual jazz, but modern twist, modal jazz, spiritual jazz, kind of free as well. Let me show you some African music, okay? Rire Africain, Francis Bébé. Francis Bébé, I've talked on this channel many times, is a musician from Cameroon who was also an intellectual and a writer and a critic, worked for UNESCO in Paris, had access to the UNESCO music library. He was the head of the music department for the UNESCO. So he was a very cluey guy. He wrote books. He was an activist, and he wrote songs. And this compiles his songs, which are it's called African Laughter, Rire Africain, and you can see them, having a good time. And basically, these songs are just like all of them are kind of comedic. They kind of have him just riffing about aspects of life in Cameroon and just making fun of, tribal society, the role of women, all sorts of like very. I mean, he's obviously making fun of himself by doing that. And for me, the apex is the last song, On les aime bien, in which he destroys colonial attitudes of tourists in Africa with gusto. Like, it's an amazing song. Next, a beautiful copy of this album by Ku Nimo, who you can see here, is a musician from Ghana, I think, or Nigeria. I think it's Ghana. And this is an album from 1977 or 1976, which is kind of a mix between high life and folk, African folk. Super, super funky, super enjoyable kind of, you put that on, it just puts a smile on your face. It's just joyful music. A friend of mine had given me a voucher for a record store for my birthday. And I thought, instead of buying like a cheap $20 record or two or three, I thought I'd buy something significant, like something that I remember the birthday present for. And I picked this. It's obviously very flimsy and very, not in great condition because it's old, but the music is superb and the record plays really well, and I would only highly recommend this. This is a real treasure of Ghanaian music, and I've just been loving it. I'm going to talk about a bit of soul for a second. I played this record that I hadn't played for ages, Lewis Taylor, a neo-soul, psychedelic soul classic, minor classic from the UK. This guy was in the Edgar Broughton band. Not that I know very much about that, but that's like a 70s UK psych band. And he made in the 1996 this absolute classic neo-soul. If you like things like D'Angelo, it's not a million miles away from D'Angelo, if you like Terry Callier, if you like Bill Withers, there's something of that kind of music in Lewis Taylor. It's a beautiful record. This is a record my friend Amos made me buy last week. We went for a gig, and he said, this record is amazing. It was produced by Jim O'Rourke, mixed and mastered by Jim O'Rourke, and he plays guitar and bass on it. It is the great Eiko Ishibashi, who's released a ton of albums under his name, and this is called For McCoy. And the interesting thing is, this is an album dedicated to Jack McCoy, a character from, I think, Law and Order or something, like a TV show. Can't remember the name of who was the guy? Dedicated to Jack McCoy character for Law and Order. I've never really heard of an album, experimental album. Like, this is an ambient experimental album, very drony, very sort of like to put you into a sort of like a musical trance. This album is really like very even, actually. Dedicated to a character from Law and Order, or all things. I'm waiting for the next installment where they take a character from CSI New York or something. But it's a beautiful record with drums, violin, alto sax, guitar, and drums. Beautiful, beautiful. And obviously Eiko Ishibashi plays Rhodes, flute, voice, and collage. Avant-garde, experimental, ambient, drony album. I pulled out some classics from my sort of like French library-ish records I've had for ages, but I don't play them very often. Streaking by Jean-Claude Pelletier. Wonderful record. Kind of like a falls squarely in the sort of library music because, I mean, so Jean-Claude Pelletier, obviously, legend of French jazz funk, basically. If you've heard of the label Les Tréteaux, which is, pull out things like Godchild and the Harlem Pop Trotters and bands of that kind. It's that kind of same ilk. It's an album that came out in '74, but Vadim Music reissued this in 2011, and I think I've had this since this reissue has been out. But I don't play it very often. I play it next to never. But I played last night and really enjoyed it because it kind of is funky, but as the record keeps going, it just becomes more like a jazz, like a straight jazz record, but a really, really high quality jazz record. I pulled out this masterpiece, classic, like library Latin jazz, Nico Gomez and his percussion group, which is a kind of rare groove classic. I think from Belgium, or either French or Belgian, but that's what it says on the tin. It's basically a funky Latin session from 1970-ish. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass there. Afro Percussion Inc. Yeah. Those of you who know French rare groove would actually be familiar with this. If you're not, just check it out. It really is top-notch French library meets Afro funk, Afro jazz, I mean. All right, next, a really amazing percussion record, also it's kind of French library type percussion pour la danse, Jean-Pierre Boistel and Tony Kennebrew. That's what it says on the tin. It's basically just percussion. Niagara, the krautrock band where they just percussion, well, it's like that. This came out sometime in the 70s or 80s, but was reissued lovingly by Left Ear Records, which is a local label, 2018, and is widely available. This record kills. It really is just them going off with various percussion, from berimbau to djembes and kalimbas and whatnot. You play this at 45 RPM, you got a techno record, just about fantastic. A lovely, lovely avant-garde, modern classical, ambient record from 1979, Roberto Cacciapaglia, Sei notte in logica, which is really, really, really amazing, excellent, timeless music. It's obviously got influence from Steve Reich, but also from this kind of Italian school of it's very highly intellectual music. So I will say with the best record sleeve ever. Beautiful. And the last one that I'm going to show you today is a gem that I pulled out from a new arrivals bin in Licorice Pie last weekend, Méditation sur le Seuil. The group is called Medea. Came out on the Kiosque d'Orphée, mythical French label. What it is, it's polyphonic synth playing this kind of ambient layers with flute and alto sax on top, playing Arabic, Middle Eastern scales. This record was a real find because it was cheap, and what it's doing in Australia nobody knows, but it's an absolute scorcher, and it's very hard to find like this in the wild. But they made 2 albums. The other album is very expensive. It's like a $300 record, $300 or $400 record. This one only cost me merely $40. That's all I have for you today. Love you all. Sorry for talking shit. I will do my best not to do that. Leave me some comments if you can. That would be great.